Today we're going to rank every single epic commander in Rise of Kingdoms, and although I have been playing for a very, very long time, almost 8 years at this point, I rarely use the epic commanders other than for Barbing and Gathering, which is why I've brought on some special guests from the New Era Start group. They've got over 2,400 people that are all starting at the same time, and they want to give this guidance to their players, so we're recreating the epic tier list with them to talk about how and when you use each of these epic commanders. So although I've got them all expertised and I almost never use them, in the early game, there is a lot you can do with epic commanders, and you should plan to not be using a lot of these commanders in the end game, other than for some maintenance activities like Gathering and Barbing, which we'll talk about in a bit. So joining me today, we've got Bull, Jodo, and Peanut from the New Era Start group. You can join their Discord server, linked down below. You can also join my Discord server, that's discord.gg/Chisgule. And if you're subscribed to the channel, you know you can always use the timestamps to jump ahead. And speaking of jumping ahead, let's jump into the exciting stuff. We're going to start with the most impactful commanders first in this tier list, which are going to be up in the S tier. And then we'll talk about the A tier, B tier, C tier, D tier, and go from there. So gentlemen, what are the very best epic commanders in Rise of Kingdoms for battling other players specifically? And we're talking about the early game.
So first off, this one's easy, is Sun Tzu. He, in my opinion, is better than most legendaries, all but maybe 5 or 6 for KVK1. He honestly deserves to be a legendary with how good he is.
Ooh, okay. Well, he does have a prime form that is legendary, but that's a whole other can of worms we're not going to open here. Sun Tzu is going all the way up at the top, and a part of the reason we're putting him all the way up at the top is that he does a couple things, and I can pull it up here in game to show you. He is going to do area of effect damage, which is a big deal. He does damage over time to those units that he hits. He generates rage, which means he's going to use this skill more often, which is amazing. He's good for defending your city. And not only is he good, but he gives a more valuable stat. Damage taken reduction and damage dealt increase is better than stats point for point. He also, over here, is giving you damage reduction, which again is better than stats point for point. And he's got a health boost, which is often the most coveted stat. And he's increasing skill damage. So pair with another commander that does skill damage ideally, and you're really cooking. Plus, you are going to be picking China as your starting civilization, which means you're going to get more of his sculptures anyways. So all around, you're saying the uncontested champion is Sun Tzu, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, fit with possibly every epic commander in the game as well.
Okay, so where do we go from here then?
The only other commander that I think truly deserves S tier is Baibars. He, not quite as popular as Sun Tzu, but some very good pairings with other cavalry commanders like Mina. He can also be paired with YSG and Sun. Sun as the secondary there. But those marches can trade really well in KVK1.
Yeah, I mean, so Baibars does a couple things. He's got big AoE damage, he slows enemies, he's got a bunch of stats, 20% attack, and the third skill is for hitting cities, actually completely worthless to you. The fourth skill is relevant to the open field. When you leave combat, which will happen more often than you would think, you get healed a little bit, which is not all that important, but you do get a march speed boost, which is really nice. And if you were working on him, you could basically lock the first two skills, or really the first skill, then the second skill, concentrate all your talent, all your skill points over there, then unlock the sort of fourth skill and try to have the points land there rather than this city hitting skill, which is, you know, really not useful at all. But the reason that both of these commanders are so powerful, in part, Sun Tzu and Baibars, is because of their area of effect damage. And what's so interesting about Baibars in particular is that his area of effect damage is not reduced based off of hitting many targets. In the end game, commanders have their damage reduced per target when you hit more things. And that's because AoE is just area of effect damage. It's just really busted if there's not something making it weaker for hitting more stuff, there's no restriction listed here, and that's a part of the reason that he's really powerful. You can really do a lot of damage. So you want to be ideally attacking into large groups of enemies, and I think there's a lot of versatility with Baibars. He's also got cavalry and skill tree, which is really good for the open field, so you end up talenting him. Not quite like this. Wow, that is an old build. This build right over here would be the one you would use. Easy peasy. All right, gents, is there anyone else that belongs in the S tier? The best of the best?
I do not think so. I mean, you could debate
so either.
You could debate a few other commanders, like some of the ones that will have an A tier, but no, those two are just so far above all the other epic commanders.
All right, well then let's dive into the A tier. Who would we have potentially debated for the S tier as someone who maybe was a candidate for being up there?
Let's suggest Herman. Herman is probably one of the best archers epics. He is actually the best epic archer. His damage factor also being the highest of all epic archer commanders. Pairs him very well with, for example, Flipbows and El Cid. While his skill actually also does reduce the enemy's rage bar by 100 when the skill is maxed, of course.
Yeah. It's easy to underestimate Herman. 1,150 damage factor, which you said was the highest among any of the epics against a single target. Reducing the enemy's rage is really cool. This is something you won't learn till much later on, but consider subscribing if you're getting value. But the way that rage works in the game is you generate all your rage. Then the game lowers that rage down to the cap. The most you can ever get in a single turn is 220. Then it applies reductions. So reductions are incredibly powerful because they apply after they've already generated as much rage as they would have in their calculation. Then you strip away whatever the reduction is. And the silence for 2 seconds can be very powerful as well. One really cool pairing is Herman primary, El Cid secondary. El Cid has a disarm. So between the two of them, you can basically knock out the enemy's active skills for 3 seconds in a row, which is pretty legit. The other thing that's really good about Herman in the early game is it's hard to get march speed. He has 10%. Also, he has a way to gain extra rage, which is very, very, very strong. A basic attack is when you directly target an enemy. So you launch one basic attack per second with most marches. Combo cavalry is a different beast entirely. Advanced guide, we'll talk about it later. But in the early game, you're only doing basics when you directly target an enemy. He can generate 100 rage from that, which is major. There's only a 10% chance, but it's better than nothing. And the normal damage boost is kind of handy as well. Increases your basic attack, counterattack damage. In the early game, decent. So Herman all around is solid. Archer and skill talent trees are actually really handy to have, and you probably end up running a build kind of like this, maybe dropping a couple points from full quiver to put them in razor sharp, but otherwise this build I have on screen is just about right. Okay, so who else goes in at the A tier? Other good candidates here?
Well, it's kind of hard to say because Bjorn could be a candidate, but I would rather take him in the B tier and leave the A tier now.
All right. We can put him there for now in B, and we'll talk about him later. Who else might go in A?
The only other commander that I think might deserve to be in A is, and I'm not going to pronounce this properly, but Imhotep.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good pairing with Tutmos, and I've seen a few people pair it with El Cid, but Tutmos, Imhotep, and whatever. I'm not going to pronounce it right, but
Imhotep, I think.
That's a pretty good pairing, yeah.
So fun fact, he came with the Egyptian civilization, which you can see in the background a little bit here, and I actually got to film a commercial for Rise of Kingdoms with the actual Pawn Stars from the TV show. He was a part of the announcement. Anyways, I'll have a card for that in the end screen. It was a really crazy video. So Imhotep, is interesting. He's an archer garrison support. I do love having another garrison option. I completely glossed over Herman's garrison skill because, like, I don't know, guys. If you end up needing to garrison, you're probably already in some trouble here. He gives city garrison attack, but Emotep has some interesting skills. So his active skill, for the next 3 seconds, 5 nearby enemy troops take 30% more damage and lose 50 rage per second if you've got Emotep as the secondary. So you definitely use Emotep as the secondary, but this is like Joan of Arc in reverse. Instead of buffing your allies, you're debuffing the enemies. And these debuffs last for 3 seconds. I mean, what are your thoughts on that debuff rather than just doing damage?
I mean, debuffing marches are really nice, even though they can improve your report some, but they also really help in ball fights, like improve your teammates' reports as well.
Yeah.
So it's very helpful all around.
Yeah, I mean, they're big debuffs. In addition, he's got 30% of stats here. 15 are attack, 15 are defense. City garrison health is a really nice addition for defending your city. Whenever this commander's troops hit with a basic attack, you have a 10% chance to reduce the attacker's skill damage by 15% for 3 seconds. I mean, his skills, at first blush, feel kind of mid, except this active skill. Like, this is 30% damage is a life-changing amount of damage difference. Generally, I think people err on the side of like doing damage rather than doing a debuff, because there's a chance you debuff enemies that are running away or armies that are almost dead anyways. But when you're hitting main enemy targets, this is huge. 50 rage per second ends up being 150 rage per march. So if you are hitting 5 enemy troops, you're looking at 750 total rage that you've stripped from the enemy. That's 150 per march times 5. I mean, that ends up being pretty meaningful, especially now that you know how rage reduction calculations work. So if we leave Emotep in the A tier, who else do we put in potentially in the A tier to join him?
Honestly,
I'll
I don't
say-
think there's any other commanders that deserve A tier.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. A tier is locked up. Now, what this means, by the way, is if you wanted an epic commander for infantry, it's Sun Tzu. If you wanted an epic commander for cavalry, it's Baibars. And for archers, it's Herman. Or you could go the Emotep route. So let's go down to the B tier, and we already have Bjorn Ironside in here. So let's pull him up in front of the class here and talk about Bjorn Ironside. So he does direct damage, 700 factor, and for the next 3 seconds, 3 enemy troops take 15% more skill damage. So most commanders in the early game are doing skill damage. That's kind of interesting. The second skill sucks. It's for attacking a city, which is really not going to be relevant. So basically max the first skill, and if you are using Bjorn Ironside, you would then want to unlock all of the rest of his skills. And then you get the 10% attack and defense on the third. And whenever this commander's troop launches a basic attack, you have a 10% chance to deal extra damage factor, 800 factor to the target. But that is a cooldown of 5 seconds. So the interesting thing about this is called instant proc damage. This is the first commander we've talked about that has this. You might touch an enemy for a second and run away and have done 800 damage factor, which is a full active skill worth. Technically, it's more. So that instant proc damage is easy to overlook, but quite powerful. The expertise here is enhancing the active skill. What are your thoughts on why he goes in the A tier, or sorry, the B tier?
I mean,
Well-
once we get down to the B tier, the commanders are a bit worse, but he can be paired with Sun Tzu, and that's really the only pairing I would recommend. Sun Tzu obviously has better pairings, like Martel or Ethel, but if you can't afford either of them, then Bjorn is a very good secondary. Or
You know,
choice
it's
behind
interesting
them.
you mentioned Sun, because Sun Tzu enhances skill damage by 20%. which, by the way, does have synergy over here with the 4th skill on Bjorn. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So then who else are we dropping in at I did it again, at B tier to join him? I want to put my Vikings higher in this tier list. I watched the Vikings TV show. Great show. Loved it. Who else is going in at B?
Another one we could talk about is Billy. Yeah, so he's one of the go-to commanders for cavalry. Pairs very well with Cao as secondary, and they're actually usually used to hit farmers, which is kind of a dirty trick to do in a KVK, but does work for many people. And just them together, they are very fast. On the field.
Yeah. So a couple things going on here. The active skill is kind of mid. 450 factor, but major debuffs that last for 2 seconds. 30% attack and 30% defense. So this is a huge debuff to your enemy. 35% damage to barbs. Obviously, he's great for barbing. You also get 30% defense, which is massive on the 3rd skill. And you get a 50% march speed boost for 10 seconds whenever you exit combat. So you can be very slippery jumping into resource nodes and get away from enemies. Also, this 4th skill is really busted. 25% more damage. Remember earlier I said 30% is a life-changing amount of damage? Well, it's another 25%. It only works on low health targets. They have to have less than 50% of units remaining, but yeah, you can really wreck with that. And then the expertise here is enhancing the skill that lets you move faster and get defense by really kind of a jaw-dropping amount for an epic. This is an unusually good expertise skill because here you're getting 15% of stats and also this march speed boost. Whereas typically on an epic commander, if I were to pick like Olgi Mundok, you're only getting like 10% total additional stats. So that is a part of the reason that good old Belisarius is better than you would think. Okay, who else goes in at the B tier?
Someone I would say goes at the B tier would be Skippy.
Skippy. All right, talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, he has good damage, and he's just really tanky because of his damage reduction and healing factor. So that goes well in the field.
He's a funny guy. So if you are higher power and you run into a big group of enemies and they all start attacking you, taking 25% less damage and dealing 25% more counter is really busted. I think he is most busted for players that are higher spenders. They have teched up a bunch. They have higher tier troops. And just letting your enemies kill themselves on your own march is actually quite effective with him. And I remember people were really kind of shocked at how good he was in that context, even when I started playing. So Patient Warrior, 2nd skill, is also kind of a weird one. So he makes it so that when you're hit with a basic attack, remember that means an enemy directly targets you. You have a 15% chance for that troop to get... Oh, you have a 15% chance to get 100% attack for 2 seconds. Now, attack is kind of weird on Skippy. What it does here is it makes it so you do more skill damage, you do more basic attack damage, but you also end up doing more counterattack damage. So even for the scenario I described where you're running it down in an enemy group, the reduction of damage taken, the increase of counterattack, boosting your attack overall, it really pops off. And the cherry on top is that if you're below 50% health, you have a chance to recover some units too. Both of these abilities have a 5-second cooldown, but it is worth mentioning that for having them trigger at all, 15% chance is pretty high, and the more things that are hitting you, the faster this is going to trigger. 3rd skill's for hitting cities, which is worthless. 4th skill just gets you more troop capacity, which could end up being a bigger hospital bill, which is a part of the reason why using him in an army where you are more teched up than an enemy can be really strong.
One more thing with him. Martel Scipio is actually one of the very best counter rallies in early Kingdom just because of how much counterattack damage that does. So if it's being swarmed, it will just destroy the swarmers.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense, actually. Yeah. I definitely can see that. Even in the end game, people have done some really funny stuff with Skippy and hoping your enemy attacks you. Yeah, Skippy is an interesting commander at the B tier. And I agree with that assessment. He's probably B tier, but not higher. I know I sort of sold him like, wow, Chis, you're making him sound really good. No, I think B's right. Okay, so who else is going in at the B tier? Anybody else?
I think
Well,
that
the
the
B tier
epic
is-
sieges, the epic sieges are the only other ones that really deserve B tier.
We haven't talked about Siege up until this point. So the 2 Siege commanders, you drop them in at B?
Yeah, I would. I mean, they're not K1, but in K2, they're the only siege commanders available that you really actually want to max, and they do pretty well.
So they only show up in KVK Season 2.
Yep. But
Okay.
there's no siege in KVK1.
Okay. And they're really the only Siege proper engineering commanders in town, right? So
There's
these
a
2
couple
commanders
others are unlocked in KVK2, but they're legendaries and they're really not worth expertising.
Oh, yeah. There's the gold key Siege commanders that you can get. Yeah. Right. And they are in the gold keys at that point?
I don't think so, but I don't remember. It's been a while since I've been in
Okay.
KVK2.
I can't remember. I think they're in gold keys for me now. Or maybe they're not.
They come in the Season of Conquest
SOC.
in the gold keys. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So yeah, for Siege players, this is what your option's going to be, and you're going to have to save up for them. And if that's a style of gameplay you're into, there's definitely times where you're just feasting. And there's also times where Siege are not really the right call. It's hard to get set up and tear down, and in the right context, though, they can be very busted. All right, so that's Narcissus and Catherine. All right, I like that. Anyone else that needs to go in at the B tier?
No. The B tier seems pretty packed now, and yeah, not really anybody else would
All
fit
right.
in.
Let's bring it to the C tier. There's only so many tiers now. Now we're in like the badness awards, the worst commander awards is going to. Who's the first one, you think?
So Osman is probably the first one we would give.
I find that a little surprising. I feel like his kit's pretty cool, but tell me more.
Yeah, well, we actually had quite a debate about him, me and Jodocast. I ranked him kind of C, but a little more forward to B, but he ranked him a little less. Overall, Osman is a pretty good secondary commander, actually, I would say. Maybe Jodo has something to add on about Osman.
I might be sleeping on Osman, but I have never seen any good reports with him in it. But if ran well, I can see how his skills would be solid as a secondary.
Yeah, so here's what I'll throw in, right? The active skill is 1100 damage factor, which is not as good as Herman, and Herman even has other stuff on there too. So the active skill damage factor is definitely low. The second skill being for hitting a city sucks. The moneymaker is really the third skill. 1 second after this commander's troop uses an active skill, you deal 400 damage factor, which means that you'll trigger this when the primary commander uses an active skill and when the secondary commander uses an active skill. So that's another 800 damage factor that you're cranking out every skill cycle. The weirdness there is that only really gets broken with commanders that use active skills all over again for free. And there's no epic or early game legendary commanders that do that. So there's not really a way to break Osman in the early game. In the end game, there certain formats of Kingdom versus Kingdom that let you apply skills from other commanders around, and like this is a pretty neat skill to use in that regard. Fourth skill, giving unit capacity, you know, I'm not a huge fan of that as well, so I can see why he is kind of a tier below here. And you're right that he would even also need to be the secondary unless you have leadership talented gear, which most people don't. You're going to have a harder time with the gear, but he is versatile in that he doesn't care about a troop type.
Yeah, the investment is just not good enough for leadership equipment. That's only the Krakens
For
and
sure.
whales.
Yeah, leadership equipment is not one of the 3 basic sets everybody needs. And the 3 basic sets is 1 infantry, 1 cavalry, 1 archer. All right, who else goes in at the C tier?
So in the C tier, we can also add Kusunoki,
Kusu.
a casual commander who is actually leaning a bit down towards D tier because there's so many better archers like Herman and Imhotep.
Yeah.
He could be used as a garrison for the early game because he does have decent stats, but he's just not it. And I do believe Jodo has something to add to it, though.
This is another one that we had a debate over. I mean, I have seen some very good reports from Kuzo Thutmose. Thutmose primary, obviously, but it can get some pretty good reports. I mean, I'm seeing a couple where it trades like 2-1 to 3-1 with T5. There are better options, but it is not bad.
Yeah. I mean, so what's working in his favor? He has area of effect damage, and then he does damage over time to those enemies. Now, because he's doing damage over time, he's getting a lot of extra damage out there, which is neat. I feel like removing all these debuffs, which he also does, is probably going to be under-leveraged in most cases. Sucks that his second skill's for garrisoning. Third skill gives 30% of stats total, which is decent. And the fourth skill is yet another one of these instant proc damage abilities. So 10% chance to deal 450 factor per second for 2 seconds. So 900 damage factor is pretty sweet. The weirdness is that there's just not a great way to break this by getting extra basic attacks, not in the early game anyways. So I can see why you'd consider using him as a city garrison. I get it.
That would just be for early game.
Yeah.
That's, you would probably unlock Martel or Imhotep. Even Herman could be better. So
I agree. I mean, if somebody's attacking your city, I don't know that they're swinging in with a gazillion marches. Now, if they are, hey, that AoE damage can be nice, but they also can just put one army in front of your city and a bunch of armies behind you, and then your AoE completely misses too. So there's even ways to shortcut the area of effect damage. All right. Who else is C tier?
The only other one that I think might deserve C tier is Joan of Arc.
Mm-hmm. Tell me
I
more.
mean, she's very situational, but she is pretty good at buffing. Like, in KVK1, you absolutely want to use her to buff your rallies. Just have it attacking a different march in the background, whether it's a rally against a city or a flag or something like that, and the rally will trade a little bit better.
I would guess a lot better.
Niche.
Yeah, I would guess you'd trade a lot better. Because 50 rage per second is insane for 4 seconds, 200 rage in total, and 30% of stats is amazing.
It's by far the best buffing march in KVK1, and it's even very usable after KVK1.
Yeah, I mean, for Canyon, this is like gangbuster, right? But we're talking about open field. So she's also good for gathering. The part of the reason her kit is weak is because she's also just healing herself, which is not amazing. And then also more normal damage is just not exciting in the context of early game commanders. So she does 25% more normal damage. In the end game, this is another one of those skills you would put onto an army that you're using elsewhere in certain KVKs. But yeah, I think overall she's kind of a one-trick pony. And there's even a lot of situations where, like, look, the way this works is it prioritizes your marches over your allies' marches. But, you could have armies that get buffed that are running away from the fight or don't really take advantage of it. And I can see why you're dropping her in at the C tier compared to commanders that they're just more simple. They do AoE damage, and it's just easy to understand why that's good. All right. Anyone else at C, or do we move on to D?
I would move on to D. Past this point, the commanders are not very good.
Okay, so we're talking Diao-chan, Olgi, Pella. I don't even know this guy's name or her name. Let's jump in game and get a peek at all these, all right? So we can start with Diao-chan. Diao-chan is actually not even available anymore. It was a part of the Dynasty Warriors collab. So if you have her, you have her, and if you don't, I don't think there's any way to get her, right?
I'm not aware of any way of getting her. Yeah, she's just gone.
She's
Yeah.
completely gone.
Now, she actually does crazy amounts of damage factor, but it's over time, which is kind of sucky. So you need to be basically hitting a stationary target for 4 seconds. But if you do, you get 1,600 damage factor, which is kind of nuts. But targets never stand still is the thing. She does damage to barbs. She's got attack and defense 10%. And whenever you use an active skill, you heal a little bit. If you pair with Lu Bu, which you won't, you get a little bit of extra healing. I would have loved if these commanders were still available and more relevant. They aren't, and so it is what it is. Next commander that you had at D tier is Olgi Mundok. Now, his active skill is only doing 750 damage factor. The defense reduction's pretty mid. City defense is a low stat value of 5%, 15% attack and defense, and then the fourth skill, whenever this commander's troop is hit with a basic, you have a 10% chance to gain a 100% bonus to damage dealt for 1 second. Now, I have a funny story with Olgi Mundok that I will tell you because it is kind of hilarious. But in my very first kingdom, where there was a huge civil war, and this guy B was a tier 5 player, and he had Olgi Mundok on his wall. And there were these enemies that were slowly walking up to his city and swarming it, and he did so much damage with Olgi Mundok on the wall, because with a bunch of weak armies hitting you, you get a really high uptime on 100% bonus damage, which is just really, really, really crazy. Why do you guys have him at the D tier?
I mean, he's not bad, but there are just better options. Scipio in particular is just a better anti-swarm, and he's really not that good on field. I could see a case for him being C tier, but I would never use him.
No, I like your summary that he's kind of mid at everything, and although he's doing a lot of different things, you'd rather have him be spectacular at something. So he's not doing very much damage. He's not doing very much debuffing. He's not giving meaningfully more stats than anybody else. In fact, he isn't. And this ability here where you're getting targeted, well, what if you're not getting targeted? And what if you're getting targeted, but you're running away? Like, all that's benefiting is your next counterattack. So I can see why his kit here overall is mid through and through. Now, Pella, on the other hand, is kind of a funny one. So Pella is the Spain epic commander, and what's interesting about Pella is that on the active skill, you get 100 rage. Now that sounds really good until you realize that in most cases, if you're using a skill tree commander as the primary, which you almost always should be, you will have too much rage going on. I'll explain it very briefly, but basically between your basic attacks and counterattacks and rejuvenate and a few other things that are going to give you rage, like, burning blood and undying fury over here. I got an alarm going off. Apologies. Besides these, giving you all this rage, you layer on another 100 rage on top of that, and you're well over that 220, which was the max you can get per turn anyways. So it all just gets reduced down to 220 after that anywho. So Pella only ends up being really good as a cavalry commander as a secondary to a commander that's mobility, because they don't have rage options from their talent tree. So he is a weirdo. He doesn't look like one off at first. You know, looks like a regular guy. The Reconquista begins now, or whatever he just said. Anyways, you know, kind of a regular-ish looking guy. But yeah, that rage is not really what it looks like at first blush. 30% of stats is fine. The healing is honestly kind of mid here. I mean, he's mid overall. Had really cool potential in the right context. Is definitely better than a D, but in most contexts is not. And then last one up is Pericles, right? Talk to me about Pericles. How does he end up here?
I honestly forgot about Pericles. He was not ranked on the list I put together before this. He might be deserving of C. He can be run behind Sun Tzu. Not well, but he can.
Yeah.
He has a few pretty nice skills, and that's about it. I still wouldn't use him for open field, but I wouldn't put him in D.
Okay. Well, so he is giving you a shield. He's not doing damage, so I don't love it. He's shielding you, which means like he's the kind of commander you would actually want to pair with maybe Skippy, who, you know, Skippy wants to be able to absorb a lot of damage. Pericles can help with that. And any healing their troop receives is increased by 15%, which is also kind of neat with Skippy. And infantry units in their troop get some march speed, but that's not all the time. It's just after the active skill for 3 seconds. Only 20% of stats on this guy instead of 30, so that kind of sucks. If this commander is serving as one of your garrison commanders, you deal 10% more damage. That is a really nice city garrison skill. But the fourth skill...
He is actually good. Yeah, he's actually good at garrison. Probably better than Kusunoki. Problem with Pericles is just he doesn't fit into as many marches.
Yeah, right. There's no real way to exploit the shield synergy. And the fourth skill here, whenever you hit with a basic 10% chance to reduce the attacker's normal damage by 30% is a big deal. But this even has a cooldown of 5 seconds. So there's going to be some situations where an enemy is hitting you, then they get debuffed with this, and then they stop hitting you and it's not doing anything. So I think his kit overall is okay, but I think the issue is there's not really a big synergy and it's not proactive enough to really feel compelling. And then there's one more we have here.
Yeah, that's Whack Chanel, I think he was called.
Lady Six guy.
The Maya civilization, I think you unlock him.
That's right.
And also,
the Mayan Civ.
Yeah.
So what does she even do? She deals additional damage to the target troop every second for 2 seconds. So it's damage over time, 350. And for the next 2 seconds, she's got a debuff. 5 nearby enemy troops lose 10% health. That's just not that big of a debuff. So 750 total factor, but spread over time. And then, 10% health reduction. I don't know. She's got a gathering skill. Whenever you launch or are hit by a basic attack, you have a 20% chance to heal. That's kind of neat. Whenever this commander's troop receives healing, you get 5% health stacking twice. But 10% health is not life-changing. And then 10% unit capacity honestly kind of sucks. Yeah, I'm unexcited about her kit. I can see why we've got her here all the way down at D. And now this brings us to the final commanders here, who are all barbs or gathering almost exclusively. Tamar of Georgia and Matilda. Let's see here. We've got, let me just go back to the tier list. Our barbing commanders, Boudica, Lohar, and Kira. Now, if you were going to fight other players with Kira and Boudica, are they actually that bad? Where do they fall here? Maybe we start with Boudica because I'm more familiar with her kit. But she does 1,000 damage factor and reduces rage by 100 and reduces attack by 25% for 2 seconds. And whenever you use an active skill, you get 50 rage. and 400 healing, but it's got a cooldown of 4 seconds, so it only happens once per skill cycle. And then a chance to just boost your damage like crazy. I mean, talk to me about Boudica. Last I remember, she's just 2 glass cannon and not interesting enough, right?
Yeah, and especially with that healing, because she's such a glass cannon, she will take a lot of sevs. The healing just gives her a lot more sevs. It's
Yeah,
kind of
so
like Richard.
the healing seems like, oh, it'd be so good to heal with her because she's not very tanky, but the opposite is true. She's bringing back even more troops that are going to get wrecked because she can't take a hit. Okay. And then the other commander there, Kira, I mean, it almost doesn't even matter if she's good at the open field because the way you get her, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's still Ceroli Crisis, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And you can only buy so many of her heads per Ceroli Crisis, so it will take a while to get her expertise.
So by the time you ever maxed, she will become completely irrelevant to you. So,
Yeah.
bit of a bummer.
Rather just spend the coins on speed ups and resources.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Kira doing 1,000 damage factor to 3 enemies is really good, but you can see that this skill is so good that the developers did the thing I told you that would happen, which is that for every additional target, they reduce damage to each target. AoE is too good. This is why Baibars is so good. Why Sun Tzu is so good. Is they've got this AoE damage that is not constrained to do less based on the number of targets you're hitting, which is major. That is major. It's a way bigger deal than people will, I think, understand. And that's why they're at the S tier. And in addition here, troops hit by this skill take 200 damage factor per second for 2 seconds. So, 1,400 damage factor to 3 targets would have been amazing for the early game, but you can't actually get her early enough. And, 20% of stats here. This skill is largely for scenario battles. But whenever the commander's troop launches a basic, 10% chance to gain a 80% bonus to skill damage for 3 seconds is insane. But you might not even use an active skill during that time, in which case it's totally wasted. So, yeah. She's neat. She's niche. You'll use her for barbs, and that is the beginning and end of what we need to know about Kira. So, all in all, I feel like we've covered a lot of ground, and our 2 dominant winners here. And the thing you really need to keep in mind is Sun Tzu for infantry, Baibars for cavalry, Herman Prime, or maybe Emotep for archers. Wait, did I say Sun Tzu Prime? Did I say Herman Prime?
You said Herman Prime, not Sun Tzu
Herman
Prime.
Okay. See, what new players don't know is that eventually you get legendary commanders that are prime versions of the epic commanders. So going back to thinking about epic commanders is really throwing me for a loop here. But I can put my Herman Prime on screen in case the new players want to see it. Oh my god. Yeah, chat. I got a lot of commanders in the end game. All right, boys, we covered a lot of ground. Anything else you want to add about epic commanders before we wrap this one?
Nope.
Oh, I think I'm good.
Okay, cool. Tell us a little bit about your project before we close the vid. If people want to find you, they can go to the link in the description and the pinned comment. But tell us a little bit about your project.
Our project, we had a kingdom meeting today, which we covered pretty much most things that we're going to do and how things will be ran. We do have a meeting summary that will be dropping in announcements tomorrow if people missed the meeting and want to see more. Our sleepers start on Saturday, and our final kingdom comes out on the 29th. For a little bit more of a background, if people want to see any legitimacy, we have a lot of previous kings from multiple kingdoms, many experienced people, and we are also the first project in history to get a number 1 100% ranking in Restart Community Discord from all of the projects that have applied.
It's huge. That's huge.
Yeah.
So there's a Discord that ranks Restart projects, which is what you guys are doing, and you are the only one to have ever gotten 100% ranking.
Yeah, and that they have their own departments in that server for specifically for that, and it's led by Agent Blaze, I think. But yeah,
Very
Yep,
cool.
We're at 2,600 members right now, and we might hit 3K by the time the project starts. Which
Woo,
would
you're
make
up to
us,
26 now, huh?
yep,
100, yeah.
second or
That's
biggest,
wild.
second or third biggest project in recent history.
Okay.
Yeah, we're the biggest as of right now, like current projects out right now.
So
Yeah.
you're the largest right now, but overall in history, what rank are you?
I think in recent history we're number 3. By the
Wow.
time the project starts, we might be number 2. We'll see.
We'll see,
Depending
boys.
how
We'll
things go,
see.
yeah. Might snipe number 1.
Very cool. Well,
Yeah.
join the project, join their Discord. Link will be down below. And if you want to see a little bit more about sleeper starts, which is like the best start you can get in the game, check the card in the end screen. We did that vid together. In fact, we've been on a bit of a tear doing videos together. We've done like 10. I will have a whole playlist of our vids together, new player guides, in the description. You guys should check it out. Until next time, you have fun smashing your enemies. Take care, everybody.